So in this video, what I wanted to talk about is how I get clients. And I know there's a lot of advice out there, and I wanted to also dispel some myths that kind of get perpetuated in the L&D world. And I'm not saying that what I'm saying is exclusively right and everybody else is wrong, but I just wanted to give you, once again, just another little perspective. It's a heart-to-heart. I want you to be successful. Being a consultant and a freelancer, an e-learning developer in L&D is difficult. And I think that's for every single profession, not just ours, but it's because you become, all of a sudden you become, for me at least, it was becoming a business person, and I had never really had business education. I knew what I was doing as an instructional designer, but I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know about accounting. I didn't know about running a business, hiring people, firing people, all that stuff, all those hats that you have to wear all of a sudden. It's very intimidating. And one of the things that happens is you don't really get a book. And so what happens is you learn as you go. And for me, a lot of it was learning through failure. Figuring out that there's a gap, not even knowing what questions to ask sometimes. And that can be very frustrating, but I have been successfully doing this for over a decade, and I just wanted to share some of my lessons with you, and hopefully they help you as well. Let me know in the comments if they do. But when I first got started in freelancing, I think one of the things that kind of maybe bit me in the butt was that when I transitioned into freelancing, I had left a past job and I continued a project onward from them for a little while. And so that gave me almost this false sense of like security. And I wasn't really thinking about how am I going to get new clients. And let me know if you can relate to this. I found that one of the things that was easy for me to do is to work hard on a project while I was in it. And because I still had that kind of like employee mindset where I'm getting paid per hour and, you know, the work is there, that I would lose myself in the work, but forget that I didn't have a marketing department or a sales team working on my behalf to get me the next job that I was working on. The other thing that I think is kind of, weird, and I'll get to it a little bit later in this video, is that I think that we in L&D have this like weird mindset about where our customers come from, and we get some really terrible advice about how to acquire new clients. So I'll get into that as well, and how to change all that. So I'll tell you my strategy. But first off, if you had if you were, let's say you were a dentist, if you went to the dentist and you said, hey, how do you get your clients? The dentist would say, referrals, advertising, I put something in a local paper, also my signage, where I'm at, location, blah, 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 all those things. The dentist would never say, well, other dentists, right? It would be kind of weird to be like, how come you're getting, maybe if he's a specialist. But usually dentists don't get their clients from other dentists. They get it from those other things that I mentioned. But for some weird reason in L&D, I hear people say all the time, oh, you get your work from other instructional designers, other e-learning developers. And I'm like, no, no, it doesn't work that way. Sure, there are people who work in an organization, they're instructional designers, learning developers, and then they'll contract out to vendors. And I gotta tell you, there's a couple of things that are wrong with this aspect. And to rely on this as your source of income, for most of us, here's why. One, any good e-learning developer, consultant, or anybody instructional design person working in those corporations will tell you, if they don't want to work on a project, they will outsource that poo-poo project to a vendor because they don't want to do it. Either one, they don't want to do it, or two, they don't have the expertise. Okay, if they don't have the expertise and you're selected because you have a certain expertise, good on you, that's fantastic. But here's the second piece that's wrong with that. Now somebody else is deciding when you're going to get work. And that to me is not cool, because I need to get paid every single month. I need to get paid. I need to make money on my terms, because I need to pay my bills and support my family. And I can't wait for somebody else to decide when they're going to hand off a project to me. That doesn't mean that I don't go for, RFPs or, requests for proposals. Those are all great things that I don't look on boards to see if there's any projects that I would like. But that is not and cannot be your source of income, because what happens is you're constantly waiting on somebody else to make the decision of when you're going to work. And to me, that's not cool, because you are your own boss. And when you're your own boss, guess what? You have to go after your own money. And it's funny because I think a lot of people enter the freelance market and they wait, or they look, or they scour these job boards, and they end up being poor. Or they end up having this feast and famine mentality, or they end up, what happens is taking on projects that are like, $5 an hour eventually, because they just need to pay the bills and they need to take on those projects. Have I been there? Yes, hell yes. I've been there where I needed to take on a project because I didn't realize that the only way for me to have the kinds of projects that I want to work on where I'm getting paid the value that I deliver to those projects is to be very proactive, to be my own sales team in those projects, in my business. And so it's funny, I made a video about how, what my week looks like. And part of my week is definitely project work, but now I realize that before it was all project work. I get a project and I go deep. I just go dark mode, right? I just work on that thing and just over deliver for my client. And then I would lift my head up after it was finished and go, oh, poo, what am I going to do next? What is my next project? Where's the next paycheck going to come from? And that's super stressful, so stressful. And I don't recommend it. What I recommend is being in charge of that. And so part of my week now is, as a freelancer, as a consultant, especially if you're working for yourself, is to be the person prospecting. And what I suggested there, and I suggest to you now, is that you don't wait for other people and you don't advertise yourself to other instructional designers. What you do is you start making connections and you start talking to people who are in the business of solving problems. Now, it's funny because I think on LinkedIn, we get a lot of this advice like, just network with other instructional designers. Yes, that's good for jobs, right? But if you're advertising yourself as an instructional designer who's a consultant, who's solving problems for organizations, and you're advertising yourself to other instructional designers, you're basically advertising yourself to your competition. What I want you to think about is that there are people like directors, training, people who have problems that need to be solved. And those are the people with real business problems, not training problems, but business problems that you need to network with. And you need to make a list, like I did, of the people and organizations that I would want to work with. And what's kind of neat, and this is kind of weird because I think that it might sound a little woo-woo to some of you, but what happens is if you make a list of the organizations that you want to work with, just start making that list. And then you start looking on LinkedIn to see who works in those organizations and how they maybe verbalize their problems, or how you could help them solve the problems that you think they have. Like if you've solved a sales problem for one organization, and they have a problem with sales, I bet you there's probably 20 more organizations that are similar that you could solve that problem for them. Why do not reach out to those people and say, here's what I can do for you. I've done it for this organization. I can do it for yours. Being proactive in that way is one, it puts you in charge. And even if you're not getting everything that you want, eventually it'll pay off because one, you've made connections and people know you and like you and maybe trust you. Two, you're focused on solving real problems, which is important because that is what people value. They value problem solvers. And the other thing I think it's weird because I think psychologically actually makes sense is that you are the one who's taking charge of your business. You're the one who's taking charge of your revenue. You're the person who's taking charge of how that day turns out. Sales is scary. Networking, reaching out to people is scary. But what I think is even cool about that is that if you're doing that when you already have projects on the go, then it takes the pressure off. You're not desperate. You're just like, hey, if you want help with that, I've got this thing here that I've done for client X and it's worked out really good. Maybe we should talk about that, what it could do for you. In the meantime, I'm working on a project. Instead of, the project ends and you're desperate and you'll take anything. And those projects don't help anybody because 1, you're probably not building on your expertise. 2, you're probably charging way less than you should because you're trying to compensate and get some work. And probably there's another reason, which I can't think of right now. But I hope what this gave you is a little bit of a perspective of that when you freelance, you take on many, many, many hats. And being great at your work is okay, but what you should also be is great at marketing yourself and marketing the work, the problems that you're solving for people, because that is what's going to help you pay the bills so that you can continue delivering the great work to the clients who hire you. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're stressed out and you're not doing your best, it translates in your work, right? So the better your clients, the better your work, the more marketing you have, the more clients you have, the more you can deliver for them. It's kind of a win-win, right? It's a win-win. So I hope that makes sense. And I'm sharing this from the heart because I think for a long time, I really expected things to kind of show up or I was crossing my fingers or maybe burying my head in the sand was the more appropriate analogy, that I really didn't have to own sales. And if you are a freelancer consultant, you own sales. You are the sales department. So own that role. And in some ways, it becomes the majority of what you do because, knocking out projects is easy. It's that sales part that takes time, the networking, the prospecting, getting to know people, getting them to know, like, and trust you so that you can deliver for them. That's the part that's for most people very difficult and scary. And that's the part you have to get good at if you want to be successful and wealthy. So I hope this was helpful to you and maybe gave you some ahas, maybe scared you a little. Let me know in the comments what you think. If this is something you want to discuss further, pursue, think about, maybe you want to jump into freelancing, listen, it's a lot of work. Some people who work in 9-to-5 jobs, I think they should stay there because it's secure. It's got a certain kind of rhythm and they don't have to think about these things. But also there's limitations to that. And I think I'm going to do a video about like pros and cons of working for somebody else and for yourself. Let me know if that would be of interest to you, because I've worked in both and I know what it's like. But the other thing I just want you to consider is that there are many ways to mix this, but if you want to be successful as a freelancer, you cannot get away from sales. And I think a lot of us play in that pool of our peers because it's safe and calm and there's a lot of applause that's happening. But in the end, if you want to be successful and you want to stand out against the crowd and you want to make 6+ figures, you have to do things differently than everybody else is doing. And you have to take on roles that do things that other people would deem difficult or are not willing to do. And that's a part of being an entrepreneur, which is what you are. If that sounds cool, I hope you go for it. If you're interested in basically working as a freelancer or taking yourself to the next level and reaching those 6 figures and higher, I'd love for you to jump on a strategy session with us to see if that's something that we can help you with. We have a program that we're running, and it's definitely going to be something that I think a lot of people will find is challenging, but also extremely rewarding. So I'll put a link underneath the video. Jump on, talk to Ryan. He's usually the one who does the phone calls, if not somebody else from our team. and let's just talk through about what it would take for you to take yourself to that next level. And I'll see you in the next video, friends. Take care.